Hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. It's Kimberly and Tim Scott, and today we are talking about friendship.
Friendship. Hey, if you look at all the best sitcoms
Yes.
in history, they all have to do with friendships.
That's a good point.
So, like Cheers, it was all about the relationships. Seinfeld about
Yeah.
relationships.
Yep.
Quirky, although they may be.
Yes.
Friends.
Friends for sure.
That was.
Some of the
Here's the
classics.
thing about this. Keeping this in mind, for those of you who like to be at home alone, when you're watching a TV show and it's about friends, remember they can't see you and they're not your friends.
Not real.
That is not real. Friendships are. By the way, I don't think it is a lack of friendship. Skyping, FaceTime, Zoom, or even texting. I believe that's all part of friendship.
Sure.
And I don't think the mode of communication, I hear people say, well, I don't have any meaningful relationships, but I text these people or email or whatever. That can be very meaningful.
Absolutely.
It probably shouldn't be the whole thing, but
It's communication. That's what's
communication.
important. Yeah.
And it can be really powerful.
I think what creates that, though, and this is just my opinion, I may be wrong, is that there have been real experiences with these people together, and so it's not just a relationship that's been created online, because that can get dodgy, and that I feel like has become a substitute for real connection. I think it is important to, if when possible, to have the physical real connection with somebody to be able to build on, and then of course you communicating however that's possible, because many of my very dear friends that I have are not accessible to me every day.
Right.
They're long distance relationships, or have been in my life, for many, many years, but it's about communication and connection, intentional communication and connection. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So last week we talked about friendship and this matter of influence. And that friendship, if there's no influence, it's not a real friendship. It's an acquaintance, maybe not even that. But influence is integral to real relationships. But this week we want to talk about relationships, especially friendships, as they relate to direction. They always have direction. What I mean by that there are three directions. The first one is a mentor, somebody that is giving. So it's that one-way giving. Now, mentors get from their apprentices as well.
Sure, yeah.
But it's primarily the mentor giving to the apprentice. The other direction is an apprentice receiving from a mentor. So that's one way as well. But friendship, the reason direction is important talking about friendship is that it's always two-way. Friendship is not one way.
Give and take.
You're either a mentor, an apprentice, or you're a friend.
Right.
That is two ways. That's give and receive. Friendship is give and receive. Mentor is give, and apprentice is receive. So direction is important. And if you find yourself in the middle of a relationship and it's all one way, it's not a friendship.
Right.
Ask yourself what's going on there.
And maybe it used to be, but if the dynamic
it
is
could
all
change.
give and no, it's not a mutual sharing back and forth, then obviously the dynamic has changed where you've become just a mentor, probably, and that's a difficult. Your roles have switched, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that we are meant to be in people's lives to be giving, for sure. But that may not be the person you call in the middle of the night when you're working through some challenges.
Right. We're not trying to make you cynical, but I think that it's important for you to analyze your relationship and ask yourself, what's the direction? My dad used to say to me, if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I realize I'm doing all the talking, I shut up. Because it's not two-way. If it's not two-way, then what is happening? And, it's not all about what I have to say. And why is the other person not contributing? Maybe I'm over-talking them, or that could happen in my relationships. But the reality is, again, it's about direction.
Yes.
And influence is important. But I love this verse in Proverbs 13:20.
Yeah, it says, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And we spoke to the concept that relationships for sure have influence in our life, influence on our thinking and on our decisions. And this scripture illustrates how important and the impact of that is, that whoever we walk with that's wise, we will naturally become wise because we are in step with them. But the companion of fools will suffer harm. And boy, have we ever seen that in our own lives. I look back in my early years, and it's so true that you are kind of who you hang out with over time. And as a young person, you make those mistakes early on of choosing, sometimes not choosing friends, but you just happen to be, those are the people that you end up hanging out with. And it can definitely impact your decision making as a young person. Hopefully, as you grow older, you realize, it's important to become more intentional about that.
Yeah.
And but it has a huge impact on our life.
So we in Greek literature as well as in Latin literature and even Hebrew, as in the case of Proverbs 13:20, there's what is called in these literature forms lines, or it's poetry. So it's like it's what's called a dishtic. A dishtic is two line, or dishtic is actually how it's pronounced.
Not to be confused with dipstick.
Dipstick is, maybe you have a friend who's a dipstick, but
we're not sure what that is either. But we don't have the Greek meaning of that word.
Yeah, but,
but I'm sure you have an idea.
Yeah. So getting back here from dipstick to dishtic. What it means is a two-line piece of poetry that can either be complimentary, it could be contrast, it could be instructive, and this one is a contrast. So on the one hand, you have the direction of a wise person pouring into your life. There's that influence flow. And then you have a fool who may be pouring into your life, and that's the direction and the influence flow. And I love, I did a series years ago, probably, gosh, I think it was, I remember, it was 1981, so whatever that is, 41 years ago. I did a series on Proverbs, and where I studied the different pieces of poetry, quadrastics, dishtics, and I was just unbelievable, the genius of God using Solomon and other writers of Proverbs, and the beauty of that wisdom.
Simplicity of truth.
And there's so much about friendships, and we're trying to relate to this idea of direction. Who has direction? Who's influencing your life? Who are you influencing? And then where is that mutual influence?
Right.
But the first line of that two-line piece of poetry is, a wise person produces or inspires wisdom. Now, you can't make somebody wise that doesn't want to learn. Wisdom always starts in Scripture with one thing, and people think it always starts with knowledge. And it kind of does in a certain extent, but the beginning or the foundation of biblical wisdom is the fear of the Lord.
Oh, that's good.
That you cannot have biblical worldview that is not based, that doesn't start with a fear and awesome knowledge and awe of who God is. He is so far beyond our comprehension, it creates this awe and this fear. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting because in the world, the highest accomplishment would be to pursue great intelligence. But we've all known people who are incredibly intelligent and know a lot of facts, but they lack wisdom. Yeah. And the only component missing from having that is walking with Jesus, is knowing what, having your foundation in faith in Christ. He's the one that brings wisdom. But you can have somebody who's the smartest person on the planet and be so foolish. We've seen it play out in the news, And the people that influence you the most toward wisdom are your parents. Right. That should you be, and your teachers, and of course your friends as well. Yeah. But 3 weeks ago today, think back 3 weeks ago today, Monday, at the release of this podcast,
3 weeks ago today, a young 18-year-old boy walked in an elementary school and started shooting. And it was not, so some people think, well, he had a gun, he started shooting. It didn't happen that day. That was the culmination of a lot of negative influence. And people say, well, what do we do? Do we control guns? Certainly, to a certain extent, guns should be controlled. But that's not going to, he broke a bunch of laws in doing what he did. More laws are probably not going to do anything. He broke the laws. And maybe it's the fact that he had accessibility to guns. I think that misses the point. And the point is not just social norms. The problem is, I go back to the fear of the Lord. When you fear the Lord, and when you understand that God is creator, then you understand that man is created in the image of God. And there's no way in the darkest moment of your life, in the deepest depression or the most hostile anger that you feel, that you would even consider taking human life because of your fear of the Lord and your respect for human life. The problem in this, and I guarantee you, there's never been a mass shooter or mass murderer who had a high respect for human life. That's the problem. Wisdom starts with the fear of the Lord. You want to have people that influence you, friends that influence you well. Ask yourself, how much do they inspire your understanding of the fear of the Lord and respect for human life?
Yeah.
It's so important. That's the problem. We've taken God out of the public square. We are a post-Christian country. We no longer value God. And I'm saying, on a great scale, people will claim to be Christians, but they don't have a fear of the Lord. They don't have an awe of God as creator. And therefore, when they look at other human life, they minimize it because it doesn't matter. If it's just evolved, then it's nothing more than an animal. And a lot of these troubled kids start by harming animal life, which were created by God. But then that leap from animal to human life is devastating. So I know that's a dark thing to bring up, but think about the influence that people have in your life, and friendships are vitally important.
Well, I think it's very valuable because we're also speaking to a lot of parents who have children, and that there are things when you can identify very early in your kid's life. Who are they hanging out with? Do they have friends? How can I cultivate healthy friendships for my children with people that share the same values? And I really do think so many of these situations come from children who were disenfranchised or disconnected, or, there's such a long list of things. But as parents raising children in these times, there are things that we can do to be able to be more aware, and be more proactive in our kids' lives.
So what if you have the breakdown of the family, and we have some social circles where fathers are absent, and usually when fathers are absent, the children of those fathers have a tendency to be more angry, more hostile towards humanity, less respect for people's property, less respect for authority. And we have minimized the importance of a man in our life. So let's think about this. If the second part of this verse says, the companion of fools will suffer harm. So when and we'll talk about what companion means in just a moment, but when you are deeply influenced and the direction of the flow of that influence is from a fool to your heart, it's going to create foolishness. So let's go back to the breakdown of the family. Let's say you grew up in a community where the father was absent and the mother was struggling to make it. And on the streets, you found older men that were companions who, let's just call them gang members, and you see the toughness and manliness, and you kind of want to be inspired by that. And so you start hanging out with these people. And the direction of that flow of influence is coming from them to you. and now you have become the companion of a fool, and great harm is coming to your life. You lose respect for property. You lose respect for authority. You lose respect for humanity. And the next thing you know, you could be shooting up on a street, drive-by shootings. That's how this happens. It doesn't take a genius or a philosopher to figure it out. We need solid families who love their children and influence them with the wisdom of the Lord that starts with the fear of the Lord.
Right.
I really didn't mean to get off on all
No,
that.
it's
I'm
good.
getting very
it's very
philosophical.
relevant right now.
But here's this word, and we'll kind of close with this idea. It'll take us a few minutes to unpack this, but let me read it again. Kimberly read this. Proverbs 13:20. Whoever walks with wise becomes wise. So the fear of the Lord produces this wisdom and influences that direction into the heart of another person, who then becomes wise. But the companion of fools will suffer harm. That word companion is an interesting word. The word companion comes from a Hebrew word that means to pasture, to actually
eat together.
And so like animals would pasture together and they would eat together. The word companion, it has the implication of camaraderie and so forth, but get the meaning of this. If you are eating with fools, you're going to very possibly become a fool.
Right.
It's like I mentioned in the gang member, or someone who has no sense of the beauty of God.
Yeah.
How are they influencing you? So I thought what we would do, what we were thinking about is when you share meals with people, how important it is in different aspects of your life. We have a family dinner. In fact, we're in our backyard. Our whole goal in redoing our backyard is to have enough space, because we're running out of space inside
and
the
our
house.
dining table. Yeah.
Our dining table, we can handle what,
We have
10,
it's a
12?
10-seater, but we can add 2 extra chairs for now. But we've outgrown it.
We're going way over that. And so Kimberly came up with this idea to have this one long stretch of
farm tables
patio where you can have all these people. And we love this because the best hosts we know are the Sparties. That's our
Yes,
daughter-in-law's,
that's true. Family.
Cassie, her parents.
And they're big Italian,
yeah,
Hispanic clan, and they know how to party and eat meals together.
Yeah, and they have this huge table in their patio area, which is actually a big family room type place. And it's just this huge, and we're like,
they have three.
We need one of those.
Yep. And I was like, we're doing this.
Yeah. So
we can all sit together because there's something powerful about that, coming together as a family, eating together. And for those of you who are listening, the people that you sit down, even in your lunch break room, that you talk to, there is a psychological connection that happens sitting down and sharing a meal, and a unique bond. It doesn't mean you end up being best friends, but there's something that happens when you're sharing food together and sitting down together. And for homes, that's one of our biggest we very much encourage families to sit down to at least one meal, whether it's breakfast or dinner, because there is that exchange that happens, and it's a powerful psychological
especially
connection.
if you have young kids. We love that what our daughter Carrie, our oldest daughter Carrie, did with her 3 children. After school, they'd have dinner together. I mean, at dinner, they would talk about school, but they would go, okay, let's share our high-low. What's the high in your day and what's the low? And it's funny when they become teenagers, the high really sounds like a low and the low sounds like even really low. And so, but it's this opportunity to relate to where your kids are. And, it's an opportunity to connect. So that's a psychological impact. The second one is social connection. And here's the thing about food. What's the thing about food and people?
It's the great equalizer.
It totally is the great equalizer. We all need food.
Yeah.
Now, some of us eat different foods, because of, allergies, food allergies. Like maybe
that's a joke on our producer daughter.
Yeah. Who may or may not like what's it
high
called?
maintenance much? Gluten-free,
Gluten-free,
everything. dairy free. It's
Yeah,
okay. She's worth it.
Do you want this steak? Yeah, I'll have the steak, but no
She's
bread.
making faces at us.
How about some rice? I don't know. Can I have rice? Anyway, she's not a complainer, but we do. The thing is, we all need to eat. We'll die if we don't eat.
Right.
And so I don't care how rich you are. Now, you may have a really nice piece of steak, or you may have, a hamburger.
Doesn't matter.
But the beauty is that when we're together, it's the great equalizer, and we share the same dinner. It's not like we have, for one group we have one thing, and another group it's kind of like mom makes it, and if dad makes
Take it or leave
if
it.
dad makes it, nobody eats it. But if mom makes it,
That's not
everybody
true.
eats
You're
it.
the big barbecuer here. Everybody loves barbecue.
But think about that. Think about how that
Yeah.
equalizes everybody. So it's psychological connection,
Social.
social connection, and our third is what?
It provides an environment for intimate connection. Now, that doesn't always happen, but it's the best case scenario to set up an opportunity to have real intimacy and conversation is around a table. And we've experienced that through the years, not just with our immediate family, but also with dear friends sitting and sharing a meal across from the table. It provides those moments to look each other in the eyes, face to face, and to be able to open our hearts and exchange of ideas, experiences. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, one of our kids loves the meal together, but struggles with hearing people chew. You know what I'm talking about?
What's the name of that? It's a psychological,
I don't
Gracie. Do you know the name of
Just
it? It's
weird.
misophonia or something.
I don't-
Misophonia.
Miss who? Miss America. Anyway, so what he goes, if the music's not loud in the background,
Yes, he'll
he'll
turn
turn
it
the
up.
music up so he doesn't have to hear people chewing. But he loves that interaction.
does.
And this is what I've seen with our kids, the boys and the girls. We got 4 daughters, we got 3 sons, is that there's a camaraderie that develops and intimacy that is not always a moment of crisis or a moment of great
Right.
celebration, but it's all of those things, and it's just the mundane things.
Right.
And every time we do this is a deeper connection. So I love this word. I'm making a lot out of this passage. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And that word companion, again, means to eat together, psychological impact, intimacy impact, social impact. When you have great, intentional relationships, it's going to impact your life in a very positive way. And I'm really excited about the importance of these friendships because they take us to a place where we're not living alone. We're really ministering to each other. Next week, we want to talk about what it means to be a friend in relationship to helping each other carry a difficult load in our life, an unmanageable load, and how to deal with people who maybe have a manageable load, and how do we intervene in those moments. So next week, join us again. We're going to continue talking about friendship. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you. We'll see you next time on Hope Rescue Podcast.
Bye, guys.